Animated armor, something that every dungeon master should be using in every game they ever play, especially for low-level characters. But how do you use animated armor? How do you make it interesting? Well, today we've got our laptop right here that's just out of frame. We're going to be looking at the stat blocks and animated objects and kind of how to use them as a dungeon master to help you be more effective, do things creatively, add mechanics. I love animated objects because there's a mechanic that's all too often overlooked. And as a dungeon master, you can hint at this mechanic, which I truly love. So, as always, let's jump right on into a little bit of animated armor and how to use it. Well, flying swords and rugs too. So there are three major items or creatures or things that you can do with animated objects that are listed in the monsters manuals of Dungeons and Dragons. One is animated armor, the most popular. And most often, you have the armor that's standing beside two columns. You walk in and they come to life. Brilliant way to use it. There's the animated sword, a flying sword, which I always found interesting, and the rug of Smothering, which is horrifying. And they have some interesting mechanics to use. So the first thing we're going to do, let's look at animated armor. Now, I'm going to cheat a little bit. I've got my laptop here with me. We're going to actually look at the stat block together. So I'm going to post it right here next to me. And so the armor class of 18, hit points of 33, and a speed of 25. Slightly slower, but hard to hit. So from a physical aspect, these creatures actually can take a beating. Now, if you go down a little bit further, look at their stats, though. The strength isn't ridiculous. 14, above average, 11 dex, 13 con, a 1 intelligence, 3 wisdom, and 1 charisma. Now, what's interesting is that even though those stats are low, go down to conditions, their immunities. Blinded, charmed, deafened, exhaustion, frightened, paralyzed, petrified, and poisoned. So even though your spells could easily hit them with those stats, most of the spells that would work against those stats, it's immune to from a condition standpoint. So now this thing becomes a true tank. Your magic users aren't going to be able to just wipe it out, but it does have a lower dex. So saving throws that require a dex save or even a con save, it's going to do pretty well. Now, if we look down to its senses, you've got blind sight, right? At 60 feet. So now it's blind beyond that radius, which means you can sneak around. And so if you allow areas to be large enough where it can't see your people, all of a sudden that adds a dynamic to this fight that is all too often forgotten. These fights with animated armor usually occur in areas that are corridors. Imagine taking animated armor and putting it in the middle of a field. Well, it's a sentry. If you get within 60 feet of it, it attacks you. So now they're spaced out in this field. Imagine coming to a field with lots of bits of animated armor. They're blind beyond 60 feet. That becomes an interesting encounter. One aspect of this creature, the fact that it's blindsight and blind beyond 60 feet, meaning it has no perception at all beyond 60 feet. Now, it doesn't talk about the fact that it has hearing, which I don't know if it does or not. So if you attack one, would it actually come towards you if you had others around? Or is it completely oblivious beyond 60 feet? You as a dungeon master get to decide that very interesting fact. I like to think they're completely blind. They have no senses at all beyond 60 feet, depending on how I want to use them. But you have flexibility here. So now let's take a look at something else. Go a little bit further in that stat block. Anti-magic susceptibility. Dispel magic completely wipes them off. If they fail, a con save. If they're in an anti-magic field, they're completely pointless. So imagine being in an anti-magic field. They walk in, the wizards can't cast spells. It's an anti-magic field. You've got 2 armors, and all of a sudden, the characters trigger something where the anti-magic shield goes away. That anti-magic field disappears. How cool is that? Now we've taken an encounter which suppressed the magicians. We've given them back their ability to cast, but lo and behold, now they've got armor on top of them. That's a cool encounter also. Normally, you would trigger the anti-magic field. Instead, we're going to be removing it, which then allows our armor, our animated armor, to come to life. So a very cool little aspect. I love animated armor for this sect. Now, damage-wise, multi-attack. Melee weapons, +4 to hit, reach 5 foot, 1 target, 1d6 +2. They don't hit hard. For a CR1 creature, these are very low damaging creatures. They're just hard to kill. If you put 2 of these up against a mid-level party, I say mid-level, 2nd or 3rd level party, they're not easy to bring down because they have such a high AC. It gives your fighters something to pound on, something to truly beat, but at the same time, it's not going to one-shot them. These are fights that can actually last what you would consider an epic fight. If you need more, make more armors come around the corner. There's a lot of ways to do this. You as a dungeon master know your party. You know how much damage they dish out. You know how quickly they're going to bring these things down. Simply alter the encounter by adding more or subtracting depending on your players and your characters. I say players and characters because some of us are creative, some of us are new. The players matter as much as the characters do. Keep that in mind. Now, we're going to come down and look at the other two pieces of this puzzle. I'm going to use my handy dandy laptop that's just outside of frame to actually look at the stat blocks, because we're going to look at the flying sword. Still high armor, 17, hit points, 17. So now we have a lot less on the hit points, but the AC is a little bit lower as well. The challenge rating drops to a quarter, and they have all of the same stats. These are a great way to add another animated object, and it doesn't have to be a sword. It can be a flying mace, a flying spear, a flying sword, a flying halberd. Use the same stat block. There's no need to change those. So that way you can actually have animated objects. If 3 animated armors is too much, but 2 animated armors and 2 flying swords adds that little bit of extra oomph, but allows them to kill and bring down those flying swords faster. Now you can have a more diverse encounter simply by adding that. Imagine that field again, and an animated sword flies off from the animated armor. So instead of being one character, you now have 2 bad guys, because the animated armor is swinging with its hands, and the animated sword that it had is now flying at you. It doesn't have to be separate. It doesn't have to be the 2 swords on the walls that come to life. It could be literally something that the animated armor is carrying, which I love. Now, the Rug of Smothering is the final of the animated objects. The Rug of Smothering is a large construct, only a 12 armor class with 33 hit points, but it's a CR2. So, using my handy dandy laptop again, why is that? Smother, melee weapon attack +5, reach 5 foot, medium or smaller creature. The creature is grappled, escape DC 13, so not bad. Until this grapple ends, the target is restrained, blinded, and at risk of suffocating, and the rug can't smother another target. In addition, at the start of each of the target's turns, the target takes 10 bludgeoning damage. But there's one more aspect of this you have to keep in mind. False appearance. Well, 2. False appearance, it looks like a rug. It acts like a rug, it smells like a rug. But damage transfer. While it's grappling a creature, the rug takes only half the damage dealt to it, and the creature grappled by the rug takes the other half. You'll notice there's no restriction on that. Doesn't matter if it's slashing, bludgeoning, fire, it's going to transfer half of its damage to whichever party member you have smothered, which is why this is a CR2 creature. From a mechanics standpoint, that rug adds a level of intricacy, a amount of depth to this encounter just by having it in the room. And you never even have to use it if it's not going right. Have the rug rolled up and in the corner. Maybe the animated armor come to life and that rug just sits there. It was just a rug. The players that are players may think, oh, that is an animated rug. But at the encounter, it never comes up. So that's something to keep in mind. So as always, guys, this is what we've been looking at. Now, if you stayed this long, I'd like to give you a little insight into one of our Fire Incursions books. This is a brand new monster coming up soon. And thank you guys again for sticking around. And as always, we will see you next time, and enjoy the new fire creature.